Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to episode 46 of the IT Career Energizer, a weekly podcast where I chat with inspiring IT professionals, consultants, and experts from around the world. To find out more about the podcast, visit itcareerenergizer.com. And remember to subscribe to get new episodes automatically downloaded to your device. And now let's chat with today's featured guest, Phil Haack. Phil works at GitHub, bringing the power of social coding to .NET and Windows developers. Prior to GitHub, Phil worked at Microsoft as a senior program manager. Phil is also a co-author of the ASP.NET MVC series of books, as well as a regular speaker at conferences around the world. So Phil, can I ask you to expand on that summary and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So these days, I am a director of engineering for the client apps group at GitHub. That group includes the Atom text editor, Electron, which is a platform for building cross-platform client applications using Node and JavaScript and Chromium. That also includes the GitHub desktop application. So it's a graphical UI for doing Git and GitHub. And our editor tools team, which builds extensions to third-party editors, such as Visual Studio.
Phil, can you share a unique career tip with the IT Career Energizer audience?
Yeah, I think probably the one tip that most has helped me in the recent like 5 years of my career would be learn how to have difficult conversations. By that I mean, a lot of advice that I had early in my career was really about, honing your technical skills and being strong technically. And those are all really important. But to really, expand your career, being able to communicate well and being able to disagree and argue well has proven even more important and has really propelled my career. Um, One example of this, a book that I'm a big fan of is actually called Difficult Conversations, and it talks a lot about how to, separate things like the impact of something that happened versus the intention. A lot of times people like to make these apologies that say, look, I didn't intend to do this, but they neglect to point out and recognize that it didn't matter what their intention was, that there was this impact.
Yep.
And when you learn how to address those things, you actually um, are able to be better at working well with other teams, with your own team, and in general, just do a better job of getting people aligned to your ideas and vision. If you can't, work well with people who disagree with you, then it becomes really hard to accomplish really big things.
So yeah, difficult conversations can happen pretty much at any point within a project or a program. Is it something you come across on a regular basis in what you do yourself?
Yeah, I mean, to various degrees. I wouldn't say I'm constantly in extremely difficult conversations. At least I hope not.
Yeah.
But I've had cases where uh, at the time it's so easy to think that someone else is being unreasonable and you're the only level-headed person in the room,
Yeah.
only to realize later that that other person was working with a completely different set of constraints or even an understanding of the words that you were using. I had a case once where I used this term, to describe someone else's work. And that term to me was something that, based on my work history, was, something very esteemed. But to them, it was something based on their work history. It was uh, degrading their work. And so, when we got into this disagreement about that, I was like, wow, why are they being so unreasonable? And it wasn't until I sort of applied the principles of this book, they, kind of dug into their story and understanding what their viewpoint was, that we both came to realize that, like, oh, we have applied different meanings to the same word. And by recognizing that, we were able to move forward and accomplish this project that our two teams were trying to do, rather than get embroiled in a ugly feud, right? So that sort of thing, the quicker when you get quicker at it, you kind of can move forward more quickly. I find that you know there's often this romantic image of software developers as being uh, lone people in a cave, slamming the keys of the keyboard away and, emerging with some great thing. But, the reality is that all software is made for people by groups of people. And the better that the group of people can work together, the more effective and the more impactful their software is going to be. And that's why, like, if I had to pick one thing that's very specific, it would be the ability to have effective and difficult
Yeah.
conversations.
So, Phil, can you tell us about your worst IT career moment and what you learned from that experience?
Yeah. So my worst moment was very early. In fact, my very first job, and I was a programmer on for a consulting shop that did classic ASP, so active server pages. So it's kind of dates how far back this was. And I was right out of college. I was a math major in college, so I didn't really have any professional programming experience. I, dinked around here and there. And so they were training me on the job, which was great. But we were working on a project for a large customer. It was a project called Launch at the time, which later got bought by Yahoo Music. And so it's a very popular like social network for music fans. And long before the term social network was around or well understood. And I was supposed to build, one of the features I was supposed to build was the password reset function. And I was really excited to, kind of have this function to myself, and worked on it, tested it, or thought I tested it, and deployed it. And then the next day, um, my boss, it is a small company, so my bosses were the two owners of the company, but they got an angry email or call from one of the investors of the company, where the investor's daughter had tried to reset her password because she forgot it and never got the email, and now couldn't get into the system at all and couldn't figure out how to reset it again. And so I had inadvertently introduced a bug where it didn't actually send your password. It would reset your password, but not actually send you the
Oh,
password, the new password. So I was mortified, and my boss made it really clear to me that another mistake like that, and bye bye. So, and this was probably like within the first 3 months of my first ever coding job, and I was so scared. So that was probably easily my worst moment. It certainly made me a lot more careful when writing code after that.
so what did you take away from that experience?
Test your own code carefully, and be careful and take your time. I think later on I learned a lot more about how to look at things like that as a systematic failure and not as an individual failure. But at the time, it was more about like my personal pride in my craftsmanship. And I was realizing that like the tools that I had at the time weren't sufficient for the type of work I was doing. And it wasn't until later that I realized what I really wanted was the ability to write unit tests or test-driven development, which helped me a lot later on. That just wasn't a concept that I had available to me, or there were no tools for doing that within classic ASP. We didn't have good separation of concerns. So, like the code in, the classic ASP code would call right into the database and all that. So, at the time, the lesson was, be more careful, be slower, more methodical, don't rush.
Yeah.
Later on, it was, okay, look at what are the systems in place to help prevent such failures. And that was a much more valuable lesson down the road.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on from your worst moment, can you tell us about your career highlight or greatest success?
Uh, yeah. I think I'd have to say there's kind of a couple things that are sort of interrelated, and it's sort of it's interesting in that like the full success hadn't been realized until years later. So at the time, I thought it was successful, but it's not till years later that can see like just how big it was. And for me, I think my involvement with NuGet, which is a package manager for the .NET ecosystem, and it was really interesting because it took a lot of effort to sort of get that off the ground within Microsoft. And even when we launched it, there was a lot of resistance internal to Microsoft to it. But externally, we were getting a lot of people using it, a lot of people really happy that we'd done this. And it's not till years later that, we went from like resistance to like almost the entire .NET ecosystem within Microsoft adopting it. Like now MS Build supports it. It's kind of integral to the whole build process. Any library being shipped by Microsoft is done via NuGet package. It's taken over the assembly as the unit of distribution, and so that's a big you know like there was a whole team involved in that. So like it's not my success alone, but it's the highlight of my career for sure to be on an amazing team that developed that promoted it. And then secondary to that is what it enabled. Um, I had customers come tell me like, because of NuGet or because you all included jQuery and ASP.NET MVC, which is another project I worked on, we're allowed to use more open source. And so it like the goal of NuGet was really to make third-party open source more viable for more people, like really create an ecosystem around that. And so when I see today that Microsoft is the number one org on GitHub and is doing everything on GitHub, I feel like that's sort of like the aftershock career highlight. Like that wasn't so much something that I did, but it was something that I was a part of, and really excited about where Microsoft is today with respect to their use of GitHub.
Yeah, so you really made a difference in terms of their direction.
I like to think I was a part of that. So when I joined Microsoft, I worked on ASP.NET and we were one of the first supported products to be released under an open source license. One of the first ones to accept contributions. There were other projects that accepted contributions and had open source licenses, but they were often considered like side projects as opposed to something that would have the full 10-year support policy that supported framework .NET framework projects would have. And so, during that whole time, we were always pushing for more and more of the work to be open source because we felt that, since we're building tools for developers, the best way to expand the reach is to really make it open so people can look at the code and tweak the code and contribute and be involved in the development. And so to see that, you know, at the time it was very early in that phase when I was at Microsoft, I left, and now 6 years later, to see the explosion of open source within Microsoft on GitHub, it's really exciting. Yeah, when I came to GitHub, what I was really focused on was um, I saw the .NET audience as or Windows developer audience, those who use Windows as their primary development machine, were really underrepresented on GitHub. And so my primary focus at the time was to make GitHub more welcoming to that audience, and to look at ways that we could do that. For example, we found that uh, Mac developers tend to really love command line, but the huge majority of Windows developers tend to like GUI, so we built a GUI, that sort of thing. And so these days, the scope of what I work on is kind of expanded since then, but I feel like the work we did hopefully at least signal to that community that, hey, we want you on GitHub, and we're going to try to make your lives better on GitHub. And I hope that helped pave the way for Microsoft to do more on it, to realize that like this won't be a hostile environment to do their open source efforts.
So, Phil, what excites you about the future of the IT industry and careers in IT?
Oh wow. I think there's a lot to be excited about. There's the work going on in AI, ML, machine learning, artificial intelligence. I mean, that's one whole new field, a relatively new field, in the sense that there's going to be a lot of demand for, and I think a lot of interesting work can come out of that. There's also the work in VR, virtual reality, is really interesting to me. I think the thing is that there's still so many unsolved problems out there and challenges that could benefit from people like really thinking hard about these problems. Also, like I think there's still, we have a lot of social challenges in the world that I think um, where a lot of technology has been built without really taking into consideration the impact on society. And I hope to see that as a whole new field really take off, where we have more people thinking about what does it mean to build socially responsible software.
We're going to go into the reveal round now. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what first attracted you to a career in IT?
So honestly, when I was in college, I was a math major, and I think what attracted me was I wanted to pay off my student loans before I continued my career in math. And turns out once you have a taste of it, you realize, oh, I don't want to go back to that. This is really fun.
What is the best career advice you've ever received?
That's a good question. I'll start with one early in my career. It was actually receiving a copy of Code Complete. Um, as a developer, that really changed how I approach writing software.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've received better advice since then, but that one stuck with me because a lot of the advice I've received has come from books that I've read, and this one came from a person who handed me a book. So
If you were to begin your IT career again right now, what would you do?
if I were to begin today, like just starting in, I think I would spend a lot more time digging into machine learning and really understanding the applications. I think nearly all future applications are going to have some element of machine learning, um, or that sort of adaptivity or resiliency that um, it would be interesting. Either that, or I'd really learn how to write games and 3D models and get into the whole VR scene. I think that's pretty exciting.
What career objectives are you focusing on right now?
These days, I f- I rarely think about my own career as much as I think about the products that I want to get out into the world. So I guess, my focus these days is really heavily focused on making my team one that executes well and delivers great products.
What's the number one non technical skill that's helped you in your career so far?
So I already mentioned the ability to have difficult conversations. So I'll kind of transition that to communication, learning how to write well and verbally communicate well. I think has helped my career quite a bit. One of the things that early on kind of helped open the doors to a lot of interesting jobs was my blog that I had written way back when. And so I think that being able to communicate clearly is hugely valuable.
Phil, can you share a parting piece of career advice with the IT career energizer audience?
Sure. When you're building systems and software, don't just think about the mainline scenarios that your software is trying to solve, but think about the ways that your software can be abused and used to harm communities that are already marginalized or um, underprivileged or underrepresented communities. So one of my colleagues gives a talk about sort of the ways that software can be used to attack other people. It's kind of similar to threat modeling, but it's more about like, for example, if you build a feature that allows you to send messages to people, could someone use that to troll or spam other people? That sort of thinking. I think you know I think that would be my parting
Yeah.
advice is like really think about the social impact of the software that you write.
And finally, what's the best way we can find out more about you and connect with you?
Well, I have a blog still at hacked.com, so HAACKED.com. I'm also on Twitter as hacked, HAACKED. Pretty much all the social medias, I have the same handle. But you start with my blog or my Twitter. That's a good way to get a hold of me. And from there, I have a GitHub profile as well and other things. But I would start with either the blog or the Twitter.
Phil, thanks for joining me on the IT Career Energizer podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you.
My thanks to Phil for sharing his advice and experience in today's show. You can find full show notes at itcareerenergizer.com/E46. In the next episode, I'll be talking with Charles Max Wood, who is a developer, podcaster, and speaker. To get this and future episodes automatically downloaded and available to play, simply subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, Stitcher, or whichever streaming service you're using to listen. And remember, if you're not growing your career, you're slowing your career. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.